On August 31st, Princess Diana died in a car crash. People all around the world were devastated. An international treasure was lost. But what happened to the person we called Diana? Did she cease to exist the moment she died? Or did some aspect of her continue on? This leads us to the question, what is the mind? Is it a separate part of us that lives on without being tethered to a body? Or is the mind simply our brain, a 3-pound mass of flesh that sits nicely in our cranium?
On September 13, 1848, a freak accident caused an explosion that drove an iron rod straight into the skull of a worker named Phineas Gage. A metal rod almost as tall as he was went through his skull, and he didn't die. But the Phineas from before the accident and the one who lived after it didn't seem to have a lot in common personality-wise. The Phineas with no hole in his brain was a proper, hard-working gentleman, and the Phineas with the injured brain was sort of a belligerent jerk. Phineas's brain was changed and his personality changed too.
The case of Phineas Gage holds great philosophical value. Gage became the textbook case for post-traumatic personality change. The personality is the part of the mind, but was altered by the accident. Something that we have held for so long as a non-physical entity was changed by something physical, leaving the question, how can something non-physical be affected by the physical? In nature, we have only witnessed physical things affecting other physical things. By our knowledge, the two cannot possibly interact, making the thought logically impossible. This leads to the argument of materialism. Materialism is the belief that both the mind and the body are the same thing, connected only by the living mind, and after facing death, both die out. Neither exists. In materialism, the only thing that exists is matter, that all things are composed of material, and all phenomena, including consciousness, are the result of material interactions. The mind is not separate, but rather part of the body and the brain's functions. There are 3 main arguments that essentially state that the mind cannot be separate from the body: functionalism, behavioralism, and identity theory. Functionalism is the theory that what makes a thing is its function. A light bulb gives light, therefore it's a light bulb. If it were to stop working, then no longer would it be a light bulb. In particular, the original motivation of functionalism comes from the helpful comparison of minds with computers, but that is only an analogy. Behavioralism is the belief that mental life and behavior are the same, meaning that the soul is actually an intellectual consciousness that does not live after death due to the fact that to be conscious or able to function, the brain must be alive and functioning. After death, since the brain and body no longer are able to work, exist, or process information, the soul dies because it is not an immortal entity. This is not to be confused with functionalism, as behaviors are not inherent functions of the mind that determine what something is or isn't. Behaviorism disdain for information processing as an explanation for behaviors leads to the difficulty of latching onto this theory because most find it fundamentally naive to deny cognitive functions as a reason for behaviors. Also, behaviors don't always reflect one's thoughts.
But come, here as before, never, so help you mercy, how strange or odd soe'er I bear myself, as I perchance hereafter shall think meet to put an antic disposition on, that you at such time seeing me never shall with arms encumbered thus, or this head shake, or by pronouncing of some doubtful phrase as well, we know, or we could, and if we would, or such ambiguous giving out to note that you know aught of me. This not to do.
Identity theory is the argument with the most substance, for it claims that the mind is essentially neural processes. All thoughts, feelings, and sense of self comes from the neurons firing within the brain that process input and release output. Specific neurotransmitters cause different emotions. For example, the increase in the neurotransmitter ACH or acetylcholine can cause anger, anxiety, and sadness, and you tend to basic needs because of sensory input. There is no thing that a human does that cannot be explained by neural processes. The mind is also categorized by its consciousness. What is consciousness? When we are awake, laughing, and talking, we are consciousness. Every night when we go to sleep, we lose consciousness. This can be shown through transcranial magnetic stimulation. A shock wave is sent through the brain in an awake person, and you can see the neurons communicating with each other like bells reverberating off the wall. However, when a person is asleep, the reverberation doesn't happen, meaning that a person is no longer conscious. If in death there is no consciousness, there can be no mind. Descartes claims that the mind interacts with the body through the pineal gland. The problem that arises is the interaction problem. How can something non-physical affect the physical? It would either have to inject new energy into the system, violating the law of conservation of energy, or rearrange the energy already in the system, violating the law of momentum of energy. In nature, only the physical ever affects the physical. There must be causation, i.e., I push you, you fall. I can't will you to fall and not have ever touched you. Near-death experiences is a personal experience associated with death or impending death. Such experience may encompass a variety of sensations, including detachment from the body, feelings of levitation, total serenity, security, warmth, the experience of absolute dissolution, and the presence of light. These experiences can be attributed to the mind trying to cope with the body going under immense physical stress. Apparition is a ghost or ghost-like image of a person. However, the sightings of ghosts are not substantial since our senses fail us all the time. We hear things that have never happened or see people in the shadows. Reincarnation is the rebirth of a soul in a new body. Since matter is neither destroyed or created, our consciousness emerges from the universe into the emergent universe we return. Of course, this would make the mind material. Possession is the event that the body is taken over by a non-physical entity, like a spirit or a demon. Often used in horror films like The Exorcist, the reality of possession begins and ends with Hollywood, since possessions, when studied, can often be attributed to severe mental illness episodes.
Compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Mediumship is the practice of certain people, known as mediums, to purportedly mediate communications between spirits of the dead and living human beings. Since there is no way to see what the mediums see or hear, there is no way to tell if they're lying or not. Materialism is the most logical approach to the question, what is the mind? It reflects the behaviors of nature and offers reasonable explanations for human behaviors, consciousness, thinking, memory, etc., in ways that can be proven. It faces reality of questions with logic. But reality is what you perceive.